Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Corsair H105 hydro cooler, enclosed water cooling loop, AIO, whatever you'd like to call it. Now, big thing about the Corsair H105 is it's now, or they have relaunched, or this one has, however you want to put it, because I'm not very good at getting my words out today, is this now has a 38mm thick radiator on it. The Corsair H100i had a 27mm thick radiator in it, so there's about 11mm difference, 11mm thicker. Now that could, cause problems with some cases and stuff, as we will talk about in a minute. But well, we really need to kind of move on and have a look at it, really. Now, so we've got it. The NDA is up. I can finally talk to you about it, even though I'm filming this about 10 days before the NDA really is up. But as I'm kind of, waffling, and we do need to move on, what I'm going to do is, we've already got it fitted, but I need to show you a close-up look at this unit, and we'll talk about fitting it and all that kind of stuff. Look at some performance figures, and I've even got a graph made up for you that we can put in the video today, and then we'll get things all wrapped up at the end with a rather meaty conclusion, so that we can have a good old discussion about my thoughts on the performance and how all the, everything kind of matches up, really. So I'm going to be quiet, stop rambling, and we can move on. Okay then, my lovelies, so first look at the unit itself, and I've got it out of the box already. Obviously the box is here and it's down. We have the unit here. Now I'm hugging the tripod because I didn't want to move the desk today, because I've actually got monitors hidden underneath it. But first things first, the radiator, as we know, it's thicker, and it is 38mm, but to be fair, by the time you've kind of added for radiuses and stuff like that, I personally, I'm just going to round it up and say it's 40mm thick. So we'll say 40mm thick. So if you're looking to fit this in your rig, by the time you've added a set of fans in, if you have to have the fans on the inside of your case. Now I'm not saying put the fans on the outside of your case and then wire all the cables inside, but if you have the fans inside the case, then you're going to need 65mm of room. If you've got cases where you have the fans, I'll say outside the case, but then underneath the roof panel, because there are cases like that out there, obviously you're only going to need the 40mm above your motherboard. But no matter what happens, you're going to need to know that 40mm or 65mm difference. So you can work those bits out yourself. Now, another thing, with the Asetex units of old, bring this around here, I'll try and give you a better look. You used to have to fit all the clamps and everything yourself, but now Corsair have made it an all-in-one kind of fitted unit, which makes things a lot simpler. And we've got the brackets here for this will do 1156, 1155 and 1150. This will do 2011. And if we have a look at the box, it does say that it has support for, as he's looking, it does say 1150, 1155, 1156, 1366 and 2011. So it does support all of those sockets. I was just wanting to clarify. And then in the box we have got the Amd mounts. It does support all the major Amd mounts, and a back plate. When we use our rig, we're using 2011. You just have some screws that you screw in to the actual 2011 plate, so you don't need to use the back plate. But if you do need the back plate, it's all there. It's all really simple. You get all the screws that you need. You've got long screws for the screw through the fans. You've got short screws if you want to just mount the radiator. There's everything there that you could need. Also, something with this, as you can see this red ring. Now this would normally be silver, and they do come with a silver one that you can fit, or a blue one. Now we fitted the red one, but if we have, I want to show you this underneath. You can see that you've got like little locating pins. Now it's quite difficult to get, you can't really get hold of this with your finger to pull it out, which means that you do need to use a screwdriver. And when we did it just with a normal screwdriver, I'm not sure whether the camera's going to pick it up, but there is a little mark there. I've now gone over it with a permanent marker or a Sharpie, whatever you want to call them. There's another one there. It was actually Jay that did it. You can see a little dot. Right, so if you're going to use like a thin screwdriver to get in there, you're probably going to end up marking this outside section. And that's just because you have to get in there and dig and then lever. So if you do that, what I would suggest you do is get some insulating tape, like what you'd put around cables, like speaker cables in your car or something, or a lot of masking tape. And then right down where this is going to touch, I would just wrap all that round, just so that it doesn't go metal on metal, and then kind of start to mark that. So give it a go, just go careful. Don't go, you know, wanging, because you, like I said, you might end up doing that. It's, like I said, they're not the easiest things to change. It just means that you have to go a little bit careful if you are going to change them. So I do want to stress that point. You can do it easily. Jay, in his beginner noobishness, didn't know and has marked it. Luckily, I've managed to cover it up. If I'd have done it, I would have done it slightly differently. So I just want to draw that point to you guys so that you guys know. Also, in the pack of goodies, what you do get is a single PWM to 2 PWMs. I know a lot of you will connect these to your motherboard, but I'm actually of the opinion that I set these up manually, because if you do connect this to your motherboard, please remember that you need to set the fan profiles up. So if you're saying to yourself, oh my god, it's so loud, it's because of your fan profiles, and you'll need to adjust them. Those fan profiles are there to be fiddled with. So if it's too loud, go and turn the cycle duty down a bit, or, you know, set your fan curves up differently. So if you think it's loud, it's just because, and you've got it connected to your motherboard, it's your motherboard making the fans loud, because if you run these fans at 12 volts, as with all fans, they'll make a lot more noise than if they're slightly turned down a little bit. So please kind of, you know, keep the gist of that. These are the SP120Ls, and they go from 800 RPM up to 2700 RPM. So there's a hell of a fan curve there. There's a broad range of speed there. As you'll see later on, when we run them, we run 2 of these fans off of 1 fan speed reducer, and they were very, very slow, and they actually become really, really quiet as well. But it is still nice to see that obviously they do come with the SP, the static pressure fans, which are designed for radiators and stuff. And as you'll see in a bit, this radiator does like lower fan speeds as well. So there we go. We've got the hoses. These are actually slightly longer than you'd normally expect. As you can see, that I know there's a bit of a curve there, but I'd probably say that these hoses are about 30 centimeters long, because this is 240 mil, and you can see that I can pull it off the end. Maybe 280 mil long, because obviously we've got to allow for the curve and everything as well. In fact, why don't we, because we are such professionals, give it a quick measure. So I'm going to hold that on there. I'm going to go, this is why I didn't do it on video. Yeah, 30 centimeters. Those hoses are long, which is, they do feel slightly longer than the H100Is, to be fair. But that's our close look. Now I'm going to get this fitted in. Obviously we're going to be putting it in a 2011 rig. So all we need to do is we've got some separate 2011 screws, which go straight into the actual plate on the motherboard, because they've got mounts on that specifically. And then all we need to do is put the screws on the top. It's actually really simple for a 2011 board. If you've got a H50 or a H55, so Haswell or Ivy Bridge, then you will need to put a back plate in first. But it really is so simple. The pump here is 3-pin, which again, people are going to probably think, ooh, motherboard. This, I would stress, me personally, I would never ever put this on the motherboard. I would always get it down the back of the motherboard tray and get this wired up with a Molex to 3-pin, so that you know it's getting 12 volts. You're not going to get any benefits from, you know, making this spin slower, because during our testing, because I've already done it, it's all, you know, we're all doing this all arse about face, but the pump itself is ridiculously quiet, and if you can hear your pump so it's intrusive, there's probably something wrong with it. But this one, quiet as a whistle. Even with the fans completely disconnected, I couldn't hear it. You can touch it and feel a little bit of like vibration there, because you can feel the pump running. But it is very, very quiet. So please, like I said, get this running at 12 volts, because that's the way it's designed to be run anyway. So we're going to move swiftly on. Now we've had a quick look at it in bits like this and get it in the rig. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness this union between the new Corsair H105 and the Intel 3960X running at 4.6 gigahertz. Anyway, enough with all that malarkey, because I've not been to enough weddings, or at least not been sober enough at enough weddings to remember how the rest of that's meant to go. So, case is obviously the Corsair 750D. Now, the one thing, the reason why we're kind of at a weird angle and stuff here is just to kind of reiterate some of the points that I've raised about the size of the 105. It's obviously a 38mm thick radiator. And we've got 25mm of fan space there, so that's 63mm. So what you basically need to think of in the roof of your case, if you're thinking of running this and it's a centre mount radiator position, by that I mean not offset slightly towards the outside of your case, is you're going to want 65mm of room, give or take. It would be handy if my tape measure was round the other way. It's just below 65, but we're going to say 65 just to allow for like grommets in the roof and stuff like that. And if you've got that above where the top of your motherboard is, because that's the crucial thing, go above the motherboard, then you're not going to have to worry about heat sinks, you're not going to have to worry about cables like this, because as you can see, if we were any closer, we would be very much into the territory of having to get creative with the 8-pin power cable there, and ways to route it and all things like that. But if you've got 65mm room above your motherboard, you shouldn't have too much of a problem. Obviously the 750D, as you can see here, fits. Now I know a lot of you are going to be screaming out, does my case fit this, does my case fit that? If I've reviewed your case, then all you need to do is go back to the review and you'll be able to see and you'll hear me tell you how much room is above the motherboard. If you've got the case already and you're sat beside it, rather than asking the question, why don't you just go and grab yourself a tape measure, get it down there, go and get yourself a tape measure, and then like I said, all you need to do is measure the distance from the top of your motherboard up to the roof of your case. This is a metal tape measure, so just a slight hint, a little bit of help. If it's a metal tape measure like I've got, maybe don't do it with the rig running, because obviously there's lots of metal points down here if you're going to measure from the actual motherboard itself, and it might just save a short. So that's that in there running. Testing today, we've kind of done a lot of it, so I'll explain to you in the next bit. But I know the next thing people are going to be saying is, oh, the red and blue mix, and the reason why we are running the low profile Corsair is in the bench rigs we've always run the 1600 megahertz stuff, so I've actually just kind of put it back in so it's fair with all the other results and stuff that we've done, that we've not got bigger memory or anything like that in there, so that's just in there. I know it doesn't look great, we need to remember that this is a bench system, this isn't my personal rig. So all of those bits and bobs are covered. What we're going to do now is we're going to move on, talk about testing procedure, how we've tested it, the comparisons, all that kind of thing, and then obviously we'll move into a conclusion and see how this has panned out. Right then peeps, so we're going to move on to the testing, and the conclusion will follow shortly after this. So first things first, what we need to do is, because it's been a while since I've made a heatsink video on YouTube, excuse me, I'm going to reiterate some of the testing practices. Now, when we do the reviews, we normally do stock, and at stock we even undervolt at that point. Then we move on to a 4 gigahertz, we do a 4.4 gigahertz, and we do a 4.6 gigahertz run. And we step them up like that to gradually increase the stress on the heat sinks. And the 4.6 gigahertz run, that's pretty much the elite list. And at this present moment in time, there are a lot of water cooling kits in there, and to kind of demonstrate how much performance you need to have to get into that 4.6 gigahertz list, the N8D14 didn't make the cut, and the H100 I don't believe made the cut either, and that was even with stupidly fast fans. The H100i did make the cut, couldn't pass it on the balance, but on the full it did. Now what we've done with the H105 is we've run because there's a significant, people are obviously going to want to know the differences between the H100 and the H105 and kind of find out the differences between them. But there's a fan controller built into the hub inside the H100i because of the Corsair Link software. And when I did the original testing on the H100i, what I did is I ran the silent, the balanced, and then the kind of full, 12 volt, extreme mode fan control settings with the original fans. And obviously I can't compare that directly with the H105. Now, what I've done is, because these fans come and they've not got a hub, essentially what we've done is we've run these fans that it's come with, which are pretty much the ones that come with the H100i, we've run them at 12 volts and then with a fan speed reducer. And with the fan speed reducer, what we've done to make things easy is we've put a PWM splitter which goes down into one connection. We've put a Corsair fan speed reducer in that, and then we've wired that straight to Molex. And what we've done is we've run that setup with the H105 and with the H100i again. So we've done some fresh testing on the H100i. Do need to kind of say that it's the H100i that's in the bench rig all the time. So it's one that's been getting used for months and months and months and months. And we've just kind of done it, swapped the fans, and we've basically matched the fan setups. Now also, I've tested it with some SP120s. Now I did look about for some quiet editions, and I know they are in the garage, but they're buried in the garage because obviously I'm filming in the front room at the moment. And the ones that I normally use in the bench rig are performance editions, but I use them with a fan speed reducer. And then they're, you know what I mean, they're not too loud. And obviously with the the setup in the room and everything, they're not loud. If it was my personal rig that I was sat beside, I would be using quiet editions, but we just use the performance editions to help keep the CPU temps down that little bit more, and it also aids with airflow and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, so it does get complicated. Like I said, if it was my personal rig, I'd have quiet editions in there, but we do use performance editions. So we've also run a pair of SP120 performance editions in there as well, and we did that with the same setup, both on the H100 and the H105. We've tested both again, and then what we've done is we've run them both at 12 volts and both with a fan speed reducer. So you can understand what FPS means in the graphs. SFR, sorry, fan speed reducer, and then 12 volts. From that point, it's all pretty self-explanatory. And the reason why we've tested both of those units with both sets of fans, with the fan speed reducer and without, is so that we can have a little bit more of a comparison and really a little bit more for me to talk about. Because at the end of the day, the first thing I saw online when this was announced was, should I be upgrading from my H100i? So this hopefully is going to allow us to compare them a little bit more. But anyway, I've got my piece of paper with the graph on, but I'm now magically going to make the graph pop up for you guys. Right, so you can see the graph. Now right at the very top, we've got the H105, then I chucked the H110 in there, and then below that you can see that we've got the H100i. So you get a H110 result. Now that's the original review test that we did, so you don't need to, you can go back and check that. Now, first thing I need to talk to you about is the dark blue graph line is the ambient, the white line is the average, and then what we do with that is we add up all 6 cores and then divide it by 6 to give us an average across all of the cores. Because you obviously always get a hot one and some, run despicably cold, and it doesn't necessarily change per mount, but it definitely changes per CPU. And then the blue is the delta, and the delta is the ambient temperature removed from the average temperature. So what we'll do is we'll look at the Corsair fans first. So 12 volt Corsair, you can see that we had on the 105 we had an average of 67.3. 12 volt Corsair on the H100i was 71. So minusing the 0.3 out, you can see there we've roughly got about 4 degrees difference. Which, if you look at the delta, you can see 50.7 and then 46.3. The difference really, if you have a look, you'll see above the H100i FSR, so fan speed reducer Corsair, is all on 0 because that technically failed our test. And by failed, what I mean is we've set an upper limit of 80 degrees in OCCT. And then on OCCT, once it does get to about the 81 mark, it will fail the test, and it will actually shut the test down, and it will stop testing for you. So we set it to 80, and then if OCCT turns off, that's our indicator that it's gone over. Sometimes it's 81, sometimes it's 82. It really depends on how low some of the other cores are in the test. But the H100i, with the fan speed reducers and the Corsair fans, it did fail that test. So this is a good point, that we can see that the H105, it had an average of 72.3 and a delta of 51.3. So if you have a look there, you can kind of see a good kind of indicator here, because the H105 is actually, with the fan speed reducer, is roughly performing around the same as the H100i did at 12 volts. So it's you've got a lower fan speed there, but you're roughly getting the same kind of performance. And obviously lower fan speeds with these Corsair fans, they do actually get quite quiet with those fan speed reducers on. So it's a fair old, difference there. That's pretty damn good. If you want to move on to, we'll do fan speed reducer again, like for like, and we'll do H100i FSR, sorry, with the SP120s, and then we'll do H105 fan speed reducer. So what we're looking at there is we've got a 76.3 degrees average on the H100i versus a 70.8 on the H105. And that means we have a delta temperature of 55.7 on the H100i, but only 50.8 on the H105. So you're basically looking there at, near as damn it, a 5-degree drop with the same fan speeds and the same fans. So enough of staring at graphs and just listening to me. What we're going to do now is we're going to make the graph go away. Don't worry, I'm still here. Anyway, so the graph's gone, and now what we're going to do is we're going to have a conclusion and have a bit of a chat. Now, performance-wise, the H105, because we need to talk about, I'm just making sure that the mic's plugged in properly. We need to talk about an award, and then we'll move on. So I'm going to give it a gold award. Now, it's very well priced, but the only real drawback that we've got here is the thicker radiator. And that, it's a drawback for some, but not really when you're talking performance-wise. So it's a drawback because making that radiator thicker is going to limit the amount of cases that you can possibly fit it to. So if you're thinking about buying this, that is the first thing that you need to think about. Is A, have you got the radiator supporting the roof with the fan speed, the fan gap, sorry. But then more importantly than that is, have you got enough room above your motherboard to be able to fit this in your case? Then it really comes down to personal preference, because I quite often with my rigs, and when I used the H100 original, what I did is I set my fan speed up as I was happy with them, so that the rig didn't get too hot, but it was also really, really quiet. So what I generally do, as I have done with Orca, my fan speeds are static. I use fan speed reducers to set them, and obviously Corsair, they send you with the splitter anyway, and you can bang a fan speed reducer in, and then you set it up and you forget about it. Because the H105 doesn't come with the link software for you to be able to actively change your temperatures within the Corsair link. But then some of you, many of you, however you'd like to put it, will probably run a fan controller anyway. But if you don't want to litter your case up with loads of cables that you have to try and hide, which is why I don't. Like I said, just fan speed reducer, or not, depending on how fast you want the fans running, and get it set up. Also, one of the things with the H105, the fact that it doesn't have that Corsair link can actually work out to its advantage, because as many of you may have found out, if you change your standard fans over to, say for argument's sake, the Corsair SP120 Quiet Editions, and you get the 3-pin fan model, then the link doesn't work. So you have to try and make sure that you get the 4-pin ones, because it does get really kind of confusing. But anyway, that's another reason why, even with the H100i, when we run it in here, the cables are dangled down the back. We have a Molex, so it's 4-pin Molex, Goes onto one of your normal power connectors on the your power supply cables. It comes off to a 3-pin. We then put a fan speed reducer in, and then that gets split out to the 2 fans, and that's generally how we run them even on the test systems. So you can do that. So providing you know, you're not going to be actively missing that Corsair Link software, you shouldn't really worry too much. Aesthetics wise, the radiator itself's pretty plain, so are the fans, but so were the previous models, and it does mean that it either gives you a way that you can customise it yourself, or with the fans, if they annoy you that much, like I said, you can change the fans over to some SP120 Quiet Editions, Performance Editions, any other brand of fans that you may want to use. Hell, you may even want to try the new AF LEDs, and that really is something that I should possibly try with this to see how they perform. The changeable ring on the front I do really like, because it gives us options. You've got the standard silver one, which you can just leave on there, not worry about, and you have the blue and the red one if you want to customise it easily. But then also the fact that they are interchangeable does then mean that if you're handy with a rattle can, you know, as in spray paint, you could then, you know, prep your own one to match your rig with maybe a green one or a yellow one or an orange one, whatever you want. Spray it up to match the rest of your system, bosh in, and you've got yourself a nice little coloured accent. Also, with the customising side of things, the fact that it's a white LED stays quite neutral, so it means that it should match a lot of systems that are out there, and I actually really like the white light, because with the RGB ones, it's never proper white, and this is a white LED in there. So for me personally, being a bit of a white freak, and I don't mean that in a racist way, I mean in a LED colour accent of my system kind of way, I personally really like it. Performance wise, I did think right from the very get-go when I saw one of these that the thicker radiator, generally what that was going to mean was at the same fan speeds it should run slightly cooler, but the big one would have been with lower fan speeds. It should have been able to have coped with lower fan speeds better, but still put out better temperatures. So as you drop the fan speeds on the H100i, for example, it will drop off quicker, or rather the temperatures will get warmer quicker than it will do with this. And as you can see with the results that we've got with the fan speed reducers on both those sets of fans, was a fairly big difference. The Corsair fans with the fan speed reducer, I will say, run much slower than the performance editions, which is why the performance edition, you know, the gap was bigger there. But still, nevertheless, you can see that there was a good 4 to 5 degree difference depending on the fans that you got there. Exactly the same fans, exactly the same CPU setup, blah 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 blah. So there is a relatively big gap there. So maybe to try and answer questions about should you be upgrading from a H100i onto the H105. Now, me personally, what I would say is if you've got a H100i already, it's obviously you can, you know, rehome, eBay, do you know what I mean, sell on forums, whatever, your H100, and you should still get relatively good money for it to, you know, enable you to be able to take a sidestep onto these, whatever. But obviously you need to make sure that it's going to fit your rig for starters. And I would say is if you're a really low fan speed kind of person and you've got room and, you know, it really does tick all your boxes, then I don't see any reason why not. The performance increase is going to be there. 4 degrees difference with the same fans is a pretty big difference. To go from, you know, like fan speed reducer, let's have a look. Fan speed reducer to 12 volts, you're looking at about a 3 degrees difference there. So that's, you know, if you can have that kind of performance difference from, you know, a really loud fan to a quiet fan, but then again, even though you've got your fans quiet, but just by changing the unit, you're looking, you know, at some pretty big differences. It's obviously your money. There is no, oh my God, you know, it's breaking world records kind of differences. But like I said, at low fan speeds, there is a marked performance difference between the H100i and the H105, and that's purely down to that radiator difference. If they fitted the H100i with a thicker radiator, you know, those temperatures may come down even a little bit more, but, you know, this is all speculation, and I know people are going to be asking, but I've heard nothing from Corsair about them bringing out a H105i or anything similar. And to be fair, I don't think they will either. But we'll see. You never know what might happen. But there's definitely nothing that I've personally heard of yet in the pipeline. Nothing was announced at CES. There was no little hints, tips or anything like that. But if I hear anything, I will tell you as soon as I possibly can do. So at the end of the day, what we've essentially got here is, you know, it's a thicker Radiator Corsair unit. It looks the part. I like it. It's got some customizing options. Sadly doesn't come with the link, but you know, I've kind of given you some plus and negative points of that. Personally, for my use, or if I was going to be building rigs, it wouldn't make any difference to me that it had link, other than the fact that you can go into the Corsair software and, you know, have a look and see what's going on. But I generally, you know, even though I have it installed on these rigs, I hardly ever use it once things are all set up and tested anyway. So I don't particularly think that you need it. But anyway, so great unit, gold award because of the performance and the customizing options. It does, you know, it does exactly what it should do. It does what we expect of it. And like I said, it does perform really well. And the fact that we're getting these kind of performance figures, even when we are starting to drop those fan speeds down, is brilliant. Don't forget to click on the link in the bottom left hand side of the corner. If you want to go and have a look at the graphs there, then the graphs there have got all of the heat sinks in the 4.6 gigahertz graph, rather than just our Corsair ones that I showed you previously. But for now at least, it's Tiny Tom Logan with the gold award winning Corsair H105 cooler out.